it's not a disposable piece of music. It's something that demands your attention.
Yeah.
Which isn't for everybody. That's okay. But for us, that's the music we love.
Welcome to the Dreams of Consciousness podcast. If the two of you would be so kind, would you mind introducing yourselves?
Yeah, I'm Brandon. I play guitar and do vocals in Tómarúm.
And I'm Matthew. I do guitars in Tómarúm.
Brandon and Matthew, welcome.
Thank you.
Guys, please tell me what Tómarúm is. Describe the music that you guys make.
Yeah, so Tómarúm is the brainchild of Kyle Walburn, our frontman. It's a outlet for emotional pain, triumph, all kinds of spectrum of emotions through the lens of kind of like a proggy black metal style of music. So that's kind of the main basis of it. And then what we inject, into it is, our influences and some of the emotional, stuff that we go through as well. With this new album, we've been incorporating some other members' ideas and stuff like that. So that's kind of the basis of the band as of right now.
So when you say proggy black metal, what do you mean by black metal, first of all? Speed, the blast beats, maybe the tremolo picking, stuff like that?
The emotion. The thing about black metal is that you're not limited to, in a song, you're not limited to just one emotion. It's not just anger with death metal and stuff. It's more of a broad spectrum. And then of course, the blast beats and the tremolo picking and stuff, and just things being entirely too fast. Yeah. At some points.
I think the chord quality as well. You find it's a lot more vibrant in black metal, a lot more chordal movements and chordal melody. And so we really gravitate towards that, the atmosphere that brings as well. So,
and as far as the progressive side, is it purely musical, or is there something about the way that you arrange songs and your approach to songwriting that makes you guys progressive?
Yeah, I think it's probably the approach to songwriting. I mean, all of us generally lean, even when we're trying to write something that's not proggy, we've experienced this kind of effect where it just automatically kind of starts to become more intricate and have odd time signatures or have extended chords and stuff like that, or really complex rhythmic ideas. So it kind of just comes naturally to us. There are times where we want to spruce stuff apart and we purposefully kind of do that. But I think a lot of the time it comes naturally. So it's kind of just what we're drawn to in terms of that dynamism, emotion, atmosphere, like we were talking about before. It's kind of down that same road. We just kind of putting that in our music.
Would you mind telling people who aren't familiar with your band how Tómarúm came together and what the intentions were for the band when it first started?
Sure, yeah. So it started as a solo project. I mean, I don't want to speak for Kyle, but it started as a solo project, and he had written the majority of the first album before we met. And then I met in 2018 before I went overseas for a couple of years to Japan to study. And I joined then, and that's kind of how it started. We met through some mutual friends, and then, I was talking to him about how much I love the music, and he was like, "Well, do you want to be a part of it?" And I said, "Sure." And so that's kind of how that happened. And yeah, from then on, we just did the first album, and then the rest of the band came in 2021, a couple of years, 3 or 4 years after the band formed, and we did the first record. We had a full 5-piece lineup. So that's kind of the rough introduction to it.
Brandon, did you know Matthew and Kyle socially, or did you find out about them about?
Yeah, so I've known Matt for 10 years. This year will be 10 years. Yep. We played in our first band together. So back when I was a sophomore in high school. So yeah, I've known Matt for a really long time. And I've known of Kyle for many, many years, but we weren't introduced until, like I said, 2018. And then, yeah, from then on, we hit it off, became really close friends. And then I joined Tómarúm, and then we wanted a third guitar player. So we had Matt come on board as well.
Matthew, what was your impression of Tómarúm? What did you like about their music, and what made you want to be a part of this?
So I remember with our last band, it was kind of dissolving. The drummer had moved on to do other things, and Tómarúm just had a new vibe that we didn't quite have. And I think with the type of music that Tómarúm was doing and the type of music that we both were getting into, as far as black metal, as far as I was really getting into Fancy Faxath and Emperor and stuff like that. And I showed a lot of interest in the project and everything. Brandon asked, he said, "Do you want to see if Kyle would want you in the band?" And I was like, "I don't know why they would need a third guitar player, but sure thing." And then Kyle was super stoked. He contacted me, and at first it was supposed to be more of like a live third guitar kind of thing because I heard the first record, there's a lot of layers, and we wanted to be able to replicate everything authentically. But we just really hit it off rehearsing for that first show where we played the whole album front to back. And after touring together, it's really hard to imagine touring without, this team and this lineup and everything. So they added me on as like a full-time member.
Well, let's go to Matthew's question. Why does Tómarúm need three guitars? What does the third guitar bring to your sound?
Yeah, so one thing I really love that we're able to do just as a basis is stereo rhythms while a solo is being played live is really cool. But there's parts even in the first record, like in songs such as Black Forms from Grey, that first verse or so, all three of us are playing something different, but it gels together in this really cohesive and dense wall of guitars. And I think you're not really gonna find that super easily. I don't want to talk and I don't want there to be like 30 bands out there that do what we do, and I don't know about them and me sound arrogant or anything, but I think it provides like a pretty unique experience live because Kyle could have the main riff, and then Brandon could have his counterpoint, and then I could have some like atmospheric lead going on beyond that. That's maybe like a little laid back in the mix, but together it all creates this experience that otherwise would not be possible without just putting stuff into the tracks. And I really want to keep as much out of backing tracks as possible.
Yeah.
Would you say that the third guitar also adds to the progressive side of your band, the progressive side of your sound?
Yeah, absolutely. We've had conversations. I mean, our drummer Chris, for a while there, while we were making the second album, he was really like adamant about us like really incorporating those third guitar layers that Matt was talking about, doing like the chordal stuff in the background and all that. So that's all over the new record.
Does everything start with Kyle? Does he demo stuff and then send it to you guys?
Yeah, so for the first album, he came to me with pretty much a completed album. I wrote like I think 2 riffs on the first album, and then a bunch of layers, or maybe not a bunch, but like a couple layers, and then my solos and my clean vocal harmonies. So that one was, he had written that as like a solo project thing, and then we collaborated on the rest of it together. But then for the full album, the second one, where it was like more collaborative, it was kind of all of us writing. It was mostly Chris, our drummer, myself, and Kyle writing. And then we would take all of our ideas. Either I would arrange a song with all the ideas, or Chris would arrange a song, or all three of us would arrange a song, and then we'd get Matt in on a couple of riffs here and there, and then our bassist would like come and give us some ideas for like certain melodic movement here and there, or some lyrics. So it was mostly the three of us for this new one, but we had everyone contributing in some fashion. And then that's kind of how we're moving forward. We're just going to keep being as collaborative as we can. I know, I don't know if I'm at liberty to say this, but we're already writing the third one.
Yeah.
And the writing process for that one has been more or less the same. So we like, some of us have songs where we're writing more, and then some of it is like fully collaborative, like all 5 of us. So, well, it would be all 5, but yeah. So it depends on the song. It depends on the record as you go through our history, but it's generally gotten more collaborative as we've gone along.
When you talk about arranging songs, are you doing it all together in the rehearsal space, or are you trading files back and forth?
Yeah, so it's kind of a mix of both. So like sometimes we'll go down to the rehearsal space and we'll all sit together and like work on arrangements with Chris at the helm, because he's really amazing at arranging songs. That's kind of his bread and butter. Some of the songs like Silver Ash and Tears, for example, I think Matt was talking about this the other day. It would not sound the way it does now if Chris, like at the last minute, hadn't rearranged the ending, because it sounds so good.
I mean, we were literally tracking guitars for songs earlier in the album when Chris just had this epiphany, and rearranged the entire end of the 7th song on Beyond Obsidian Euphoria, and just transformed the song into this it went from being one of my, it's hard to say least favorite.
I understand what you're saying.
It went from being one of the songs that I was like, to like one of my favorite songs in the album, because it just became this whole journey.
Yeah. So you're asking about arrangement. So we do that, or sometimes like I know there were some moments where like I sat with Kyle and him and I like mostly arranged the first song. And then there were some times where like I mean the sixth song, Halcyon Memory, is the song that it's like the song that I wrote and arranged the most, I guess you could say, on the album. And that one was more so done like on my own. But I took ideas from a couple people and like kind of made it into a song. So that one is kind of dynamic too in terms of or I should say arrangement is kind of dynamic in the band too, where there are times where we're in space like sitting all together doing it, and then there are times where we'll say, hey guys, like I have some ideas, like I'm gonna throw something together, like are you cool with that? And then we kind of do it, and then we bring it and see what we can do after the fact, like we did with song 7, where we pretty much had it done, but then Chris was like, yo, like I think we can make it better. So it's kind of a really fluid, dynamic kind of process, at least at this point in the band.
Right. So, a week from now, you guys will be releasing your second album, which is called Beyond Obsidian Euphoria through Prosthetic Records.
Yeah. Yep.
Musically, what would you say separates this from the first album?
Difficulty.
Did you say difficulty?
Yeah, stuff is really hard to play.
I wouldn't disagree with Matt there. It's definitely more complicated, and there are some parts that are like really challenging but really rewarding. But on top of that, in terms of what differentiates it from the first one, as we were kind of saying before regarding songwriting and arranging, there's just more people involved in the process. So the music became a lot more dynamic in terms of its influences. I remember during the writing process, like Chris and I were just listening to so much Opeth. And so like that influence like really came in. And so there's that element to it. And then we just kind of all mutually decided that we wanted to take the formula from the first album and just kind of like turn it up to 11 and really make the black metal parts like really like ripping and fast, but then also make the techie proggy parts like, you know, really shine and like be triumphant and like Matt said, you know, intricate. I'll put it that way. And we want to just expand all the ups and downs too. I talk about dynamism a lot in our newer music. You know, we really care a lot about the ups and downs. So we were really focused on all that stuff. So
I will say definitely when we were writing it, we had no idea how it wasn't, we weren't trying to make it sound complicated. It just ended up being that way because we just kept getting inspired and we were like, what if we did this? And just pushed ourselves really hard to make sure that there was no stone left unturned.
Yeah, I think a lot of people, you know, maybe not a lot of people, but some people might say, oh, like, you know, this is like technical or progressive for the sake of it, or it's like pretentious or something like that. And I can see why some people, you know, might say that kind of stuff. But like Matt said, it was more so just kind of what we were feeling at the time. We just really wanted to crank everything up to 11 and just go, 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 and just really make something fiery and epic and intricate. And so that was kind of the vision, to take from the first one and then move it to the second one. I will also say we wanted to go with a more organic sound and organic mix and master this time around. So that also influenced the sound of the record too.
The drums, we wanted to sound real, like, and they do. They actually don't sound too far off of what the drums from the pre-production sound like. Pete Centura mixed and mastered the record, and he did a phenomenal job with what we wanted and to make the drum sound as authentic as possible. I think the first pass, Chris, our drummer, was just like, oh, he nailed it.
Yeah,
that's it.
Which is like so cool to have, because most of the stuff is going to be ironed out in mixing. But I remember it, yeah, like Matt said, it was really quick. We gave the notes and it was like, yeah, boom, got it like that. And that really contributed to the sound difference, I think, between the two albums as well. And it's kind of the road we're going down. There's other tweaks that we're now thinking of making for the third one. And we're always just looking for, you know, improvement and to continue to solidify our vision even more with each album. So that was kind of the journey from the first one to the second one.
You use the word challenging with regards to musicianship on this album. Is that important to you guys, either for this band or in general, that you always challenge yourself with the music that you write and record?
Yeah, it's kind of like half and half for me personally. I love, and even as I say older, I'm 26, but as I get older, I find, you know, with the music that we're writing now, it just, there are parts that are getting less intricate. Like we're kind of just like grooving a lot more, I feel like, with certain things, which I know people will listen to this album and say, really, like that's what's happening. It's kind of the opposite on this one, but we got that out of our system in this one, at least for me personally. I feel like it's kind of, it's kind of a mix. It's like, I love the more breathable, like grooving kind of stuff. And then, you know, injecting those technical, like intricate moments are kind of like the cherry on top. It's kind of like a mix of both for me personally.
I think for me, I really love when, as a guitar player, I get pushed to do something that I didn't think I could do. And when you have people like Kyle and Brandon in your band, it makes it very easy to be in that situation. But also, this probably sounds like a pretty arrogant way of saying it, but I like riffs that are mentally stimulating.
Yeah.
But like it just to stay engaged. Yeah, as a player, just to stay engaged with the song, and it's like I love like having there being a lot of movement, and just the song's gotta be fun to play like every time.
Yeah, I think like it's kind of like a mix, like I said before, of keeping yourself engaged and, challenged by your material, but also being able to have fun with it. So it's kind of like you have a part where you can just kind of like ride the wave, but then there's a part where you have to like really look at your instrument, what you're doing. And, I think I love like these like metal and rock and madness too. And it's kind of like, you want to put on a show too. You know what I mean? Like I think that's something I really felt recently, is that element of, being wowed by a band that you're seeing,
it's fun.
It's just fun. And I think challenging yourself is a way to grow within the band, but then you can also kind of like put on a show in that way. And then on the flip side of it, again, talking about dynamism, right? Ups and downs within music and art and stuff like that. You can also have parts where you're not really doing that. And you can just kind of bob your head and just go with the wave. So that's kind of how we approach it. I wouldn't say that we approach the music like specifically trying to challenge ourselves every time, but if it ends up being that way, then it's like what we just said before. It's that cherry on top.
Yeah, we always when we do go into writing, we always kind of ask ourselves this question: what do we want to hear?
Yeah,
and that's just kind of how it works. Like every time you put a riff down and you're happy with it, it's like, what do I want to hear next? Like, what is as a listener, what do I want to hear next? And sometimes you write a riff that just kind of vibes, and you let the rhythm section, take over and do something crazy. Or sometimes you want to like, I just want to hear notes.
Yeah,
I just want to hear notes.
Yeah,
and just go nuts.
So to answer that question, in terms of what you want to hear, what you like in music, would it fair to say it's music that's challenging and dynamic?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, Matt and I have talked about this recently. Even in like funeral doom, like even in some of the slowest music out there are bands like Ahab, Evoken, Atramentus, like Thurgathon. There are funeral doom bands, like slow, sludgy, heavy bands that have dynamism and parts that ramp up, or like layers, or like something just to inject a quality into the music that is different and intricate. So
yeah. Look, speaking of bands like Ahab, like the songs aren't technically difficult or anything, but the songs are unpredictable, and they're rewarding to listen to. And I think that's something else I really wanted to kind of inject into this band, but we're all on the same page anyways. So
yeah,
we just want the album to be rewarding and to reward multiple listens and stuff. This isn't something it's not a disposable piece of music. It's something that demands your attention.
Yeah.
Which isn't for everybody. That's okay. But for us, that's the music we love.
Yeah. Even in the slowest music, we want something that catches our ear. So yeah, in the stuff that we listen to, there has to be something that grabs you, even if it's just like extended chords or chord quality that is dynamic. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I'm still listening to, speaking of Opeth, I'm still listening to Blackwater Park. I first listened to it in 2013, so I'm still listening to it 12 years later and finding details and stuff that stick out to me that I love that, didn't stick out to me 2 years ago. And that's just what I love about, progressive metal in general and black metal, is that you can you're not going to grow out of these records. They stick with you, and there's new inspirations you find in them throughout the years.
Yeah. That's kind of what we're drawn to.
The album feels like one long piece that's divided into chapters as opposed to a collection of songs. Was that the intention?
Yes, absolutely. From the beginning, we wanted to reintroduce themes throughout the record and have it tell like one cohesive story. Whereas, again, not to speak for Kyle, but I think the first album, it was like every single song could stand on its own as like one piece from beginning to end. So if you go back and listen to Ash, like every single song starts out a certain way and ends a certain way, where it's like the ending is just this big, bombastic, like epic ending for every single song. This album is more of like we were thinking of the bigger picture, like you listen to it in one sitting. And there's 9 tracks on the album technically, but there's really, like you mentioned, 4 sections.
Yeah.
And they all like kind of blend into each other. And that's another thing about listening to the album over and over again, is that there's reoccurring themes throughout the album that musically, and even in the lyrics, like some of the lyrics will come back and have, what was it, harken back to the older songs.
What's funny is that "Harken Back" it's on the album. Those two words are on the album.
No way.
Yeah, they are.
Oh my goodness.
So yeah, it was definitely intentional. It's in sections. It's in four sections. So the first three, what is it? The first three songs, the next three songs, the seventh song by itself, and then the last two songs.
Yeah.
So yeah, we went into it with wanting to have it be like almost like for vinyl. So we wanted it to be like you could listen to a whole side of the vinyl and it would be like one giant song. But if you wanted to also, you could split it up into 9 songs and listen to it that way. So like on your streaming platform of choice or listening of choice, like with CD or vinyl, it flows depending on how you want to listen to it. But yeah, it has like an up and down kind of overarching kind of theme and narrative across those 4 sections.
So I got to ask, sorry, instead of breaking it up into 9 songs, why not break it up into 4 songs and have, a couple of really, really long songs?
Yeah.
I think we were really concerned about the live set too. So for a band our size, we're usually getting, 30-minute slots. Mm-hmm. And just, we wanted to be able to release the music in a way that, like, if you heard a song live, you could go home and hear that section of music instead of having to like dig through like a 30-minute piece to find the section that we actually ended up playing that night.
Or we could like mix and match like certain songs in ways that we wouldn't do on the album. So like down the line, I mean, we haven't talked about this as much, but like, for example, you could have 2 songs that go into each other and there could be a song that comes after it, which we may or may not play, but depending on how that one ends, we could do another one. Like it's kind of that modular way of playing, or we could just do the 4, like you said, it's kind of, we wanted to give ourselves that, I guess, freedom to kind of choose how we wanted to do it. I think we did talk about releasing it as 4.
We did
briefly, but I don't know. I think at that point the songs had been by themselves already. Like a lot of them were kind of by themselves already, and we found ways to kind of like intertwine them like in the middle of it. So they kind of just came together in a 9-song fashion.
Yeah.
So that's kind of how that happened.
I will say there are some things in the works where it might be, we have a 30+ minute song.
Yeah, we've had discussions about like for future albums, like, why don't we just do like a 40-minute song or 2 20-minute songs or something like that. We've definitely talked about that. So it's on the table, but right now we like also the digestible nature of having like a shorter one as a part of a whole, and you can play that, or you can just play the whole thing, or you can mix and match and do all that. So that's kind of, at least for me personally, that's kind of how I was thinking about it as well.
Matthew, you use the phrase "tell a story." Do you mean that literally? Is this a concept album? Is there a narrative to it?
Yes. Yeah, there's even narration.
Yeah. Is there narration on the singles that we've done so far? I don't think
so. It would be Shed This Earthly Skin and Shall Ecstasy, and I don't think there's narration in either of those songs.
Yeah, there's actually, I did narration on the record, and so there is, it's not like a completely cohesive story from front to back.
Yeah, it's not like following a character through a journey, but
it kind of is in a way, but it's more metaphorical and like allegorical and fantastical.
Yeah, all the themes connect together, and like I said before, like there's callbacks in certain songs that kind of connect, one song on one side of the album to a song on the other side of the album. So it does tell I would say it does tell a story in a sense that like it's probably a bunch of short stories that combine one theme, triumph after depression.
Yeah, because through the lens of the like almost fantasy like story that we're telling on this one.
Because when Kyle was writing the lyrics, I mean, he's writing the lyrics from the perspective of this album wasn't supposed to exist.
Yep.
The Ash was supposed to be a one and done thing, and if you read the lyrics on that one, they're pretty dark.
Yep.
But this one was supposed to be like he conquered the things that he thought were supposed to happen in Ash. He conquered it, and that was the theme for this album. It's the triumph.
Yeah. So it definitely tells a story in that way, but it's a bit looser. So
not just callbacks within the album, but callbacks to the previous album.
the previous album, yeah,
Yes,
there's
yes.
there's one callback, right?
Yep. And our last song, a song called "The Final Pursuit of Light," there's definitely a few callbacks to some of the songs, and I think just into Eternal Slumber.
Yeah, I think the last song, like the last like big song on Beyond, harkens back to the last song on Ash as well.
Brandon, you mentioned you did some narration on this. Is this something that you do outside of music? Do you do voiceover? Is that something you're interested in?
Yeah, my brother recently started doing it. He's a musician and actor as well, and I didn't really think about doing it until like him and I had talked about it a couple years ago. It's not something that I do professionally or have ever like done before, but like during the process of this album, when people were saying like, Brandon, like, why don't you do it? Like your voice is really, I mean, I know my voice maybe sounds a bit like higher right now because I haven't like drank a lot of water or like, had my voice warmed up as much. But like when we were in the studio, there was this like kind of tone I was able to get. And up until that point, I had never really thought about it. But afterwards, I was like, maybe, it's definitely something I've thought of maybe doing after the fact, but I just haven't gone down that road really. I don't know. It's something I'm interested in, but it just hasn't materialized.
Where did you guys end up recording your tracks?
Yeah, so we recorded the guitars, bass, drums, and synth programming all here at our home studio. And then the vocals were done with Chris Tate from Concord Recordings in Lithonia. Was it in Lithonia? And then we did the acoustic guitars and upright bass with my brother, Prairies, at Little House Studios. So that's where we did everything.
And we spoke a little bit about Vicentura, who mixed and mastered the album. People probably know him from Triptychon. He's also an engineer and a record producer who works with a lot of extreme metal bands. Is this the first time that you guys worked with Vicentura?
Yeah, it is. We've been a huge fan of his since he mixed. Well, for me, the first I had heard of him was and actually really heard that he was the one who had done it was when Acroasis by Obscura came out. I know Matt and I really loved how that record sounded at the time and still do. I mean, it's literally one of my favorite mixes and masters on a record ever. And I know he's done a lot of black metal as well, like Fight Ark and Shade, and I believe all the Dark Fortress stuff since he was in that band. And so we just love how organic and audible everything is in his mixes. So yeah, we went with him for this one. And actually, as a fun tidbit, we originally were going to have it mastered by Colin Marston, who we most of the time try and get to master all of our records because we love how dynamic and breathable his masters are. But unfortunately, he was in the middle of moving Menegroth from its original location. So we had Victor master the record as well, and he did an amazing job. So that's kind of how that happened.
You use the word organic with regards to Victor's mix. Was that what you wanted him to bring to your sound? Did you want an expansive, organic, maybe even a little bit retro mix for this album? Yeah,
it's something that we talked about after the first record. We wanted things to just sound a bit more acoustic and natural, but still punchy. And I know Matt and I have also recently just talked about, going further down that road and continuing to, have our guitars reamped, for example, as opposed to using amp sims. So having real amps and cabs. Yep. As close to the organic drum sound and on the recording as possible. That kind of stuff.
Yep. So Beyond Obsidian Euphoria is all real guitars, real amps and cabs, drums. There's no there's a kick trigger, and then the rest of it is as close to what Chris's kit sounds like in the room as possible.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, Michael, our bass player, was he's not picky about how his bass sounds. He's just do whatever fits best.
Yeah. He had a couple of notes, I remember, but Victor's so good. It just kind of, fit right into the mix, and we don't try and go too over process on the bass either.
No.
I love a really punchy, audible range. So yeah, we want everything to be audible and acoustic. And, you mentioned retro. I mean, Matt and I recently have talked about for some other projects, even doing an acoustic kick and doing a 90s style, even more dynamic, ambient kind of.
I miss how old records sound. I've been listening to a lot of Morbid Angel, and Altars of Madness sounds so good when you just crank it.
Yep.
And it sounds so natural and stuff. And same thing with Blessed Are the Sick and Covenant and Domination. Just they all sound so good. And I love that late 80s, 90s sound. Human by Death.
Yep.
One of the best sounding records ever, in my opinion. The drums were perfect.
Yeah.
Guitar tones are crushing. The solos absolutely soar. And Chuck's vocals are so clear, and you can hear every single word that he's saying.
It's kind of we kind of go for a mix of modern punchiness with that old atmosphere, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
That's what we're going for. And I can't speak for everyone else, but that's kind of what I like and what I try and, bring to the table when we're talking about mixing and organic production and stuff. And yeah, we're just continuing to try, and it's a never ending quest to nail exactly how you want it to sound.
More modern example of a band that really nailed it, and which is why we always go with Colin Marston, was Colored Sands.
Yeah.
It just has that vibe.
Yep.
And the louder you have that album, the better it sounds, because he didn't just absolutely brick wall it and the mastering. So because it breathes so much, you can actually crank your speakers, and it doesn't sound harsh or fatiguing to listen to. You can just let it just punch buildings. I don't know.
Yeah. So that's kind of our vision.
Is this an album that you think that people will find things that they didn't hear the first time upon repeated listens?
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. There are so many recurring themes that like because when I listen to the album, like we hear all the recurring themes, but I've thought to myself before, like I actually think that there might be some that are subtle to the point to where some people might have to like catch it on another listen or consecutive listens.
If you catch everything on this album in the first listen, you should probably be like a brain surgeon and be making like 7 figures or something. Like,
or at least go to Vegas and play some blackjack, right?
your cranium is like bit bigger than everyone else's. Yeah. You can probably like lift things with your mind. No, but yeah, it's to be honest, like I helped write the record and I still find things that, you know, when we got the stems back from Victor, and I love listening to stems and just isolated tracks because I'm a nerd. And there's stuff that I didn't notice in the mix because it's like there's so much density. Then I go back and listen to the record with the full mix, and then I hear the things that I picked out by listening to the stems, and I don't know, that's so fun to me, just being able to listen to something over and over again and pick things out. And like I said, I was a part of the writing process, so I can't imagine. I'm actually a little worried. Someone listening to this record for the first time, they might be like, "Oh my god, this is too much."
Yeah, I guess it always could go the other way, where oh my god, it's like so much to keep track of.
Yeah,
But I think also one thing is it is definitely a record. We may have mentioned this before. It is definitely a record that you have to take your time with. It's going to take multiple listens for sure. It's a long record. It's longer than our first one. I believe it's 70 minutes, which is quite long. And we've talked about experimenting with different lengths in the future and stuff. So for people who like the long one, like the long albums or like the shorter albums, like don't worry, like we're kind of, with you there. We're going to see what we can do with some other, it's all about dynamism, right? So we're going to see what we can do with different lengths and stuff. We want to experiment with that too. But I definitely think it's going to be something that people will have to kind of take slowly, really kind of sink their teeth into. It's kind of like that. Like I remember having to do that with the last two Job for a Cowboy albums. Like they're so in your face and they're so like punchy, but when you really delve deep into the songs, like there's so much more there. And on subsequent listens, like you can really like take it all in. And if you kind of really focus and go track by track, then you'll catch a lot more. So I think if people approach it like that or not, I mean, you can just kind of dive head first and just put it on and see if it catches your ear in the background.
the most recent Opeth album, I think, is a great example for me personally. But the first time I listened to it, we were actually all sitting in the room together listening to it because we were so excited. It was an Opeth album with death metal vocals on it again.
Yeah.
I didn't think we'd ever see that again.
So we all got together really excited to listen to it.
Yeah, and that album is dense.
Yep.
Like, and I was just like, I don't even know what he's doing at some points. And
what's cool about that one is that, like, that first listen, like you said, was really dense. But then the more or at least for me personally, the more that I stuck with it. Now there's moments from each song that I'm like, yep, that's part of that song.
Yep.
Like I go to that song for that moment.
Well, now I can listen to the whole record and I know exactly how it goes, and I love it. I love it so much.
So we hope that people spend the time with ours as well, and it can kind of become that for them, where they can kind of say, oh, that's that part that happens here and there. And I think it might just take people some time. Or you're a brain surgeon, like Matt said.
Yeah, and you just understand all of it immediately.
Yeah.
You're just like,
yeah.
We spoke a little bit about playing shows and bringing this album to the live space. What do you guys have planned for the rest of the year? Maybe for the summer, playing shows and tours, things like that?
Yeah, so I can't give any details now, but we are really close to finalizing a tour that's happening this summer, and we're really excited about it. We're going to be playing like the first good chunk of the new record, so that'll be announced, really soon. And then we're discussing stuff that we want to do for the rest of the year, but we still have to like put all those pieces together and get all of it sorted out. So, yeah,
you probably hear this from every band, but touring is pretty dicey right now. We're all just trying to, once you find like an opportunity or a spot, you just kind of have to jump for it. And usually only happens a couple months before everything, or usually only happens like a couple days before it gets announced. And then a couple of months before you hit the road. And it's just a little crazy right now, especially with the state of the world.
Yeah.
Um,
Plus, we're still trying to like build our brand and build our band and stuff like that. So the opportunities are they're coming and they're floating, but it's not as like, how do I put it? It's not happening like a billion times and we just go boom, 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 like go, go, go. We're putting a bit more care into it and really making sure that it's at the right time, the way that we're able to do it, the way we want to do it, with the people that we want to do it with, and stuff like that. Obviously, we're waiting on like offers and stuff. So that's something that, once the album comes out, hopefully we're able to get some offers and, get that going. So, but yeah, as far as plans for this year, we have a tour coming up in the summer, which will be announced very soon. And then we're trying to get something together for the fall as well. So fingers crossed, stay tuned for that. And yeah.
So by the time people hear this episode or watch it on YouTube, Beyond Obsidian Euphoria will be out through Prosthetic Records. Brandon and Matthew, please tell everyone how they can order the album. What's the best way to get it?
Yeah. So through our Bandcamp, you can get the vinyl, the CD, or you can do a digital purchase. I'm sure it'll also be available like on the other places you can buy music, iTunes.
yeah, Prosthetic takes care of that. So, you can get it on Apple Music, or you listen to it on Spotify or YouTube or whatever. You could also go to Prosthetic's web store and order their album from there.
Yep.
So yeah, we should be everywhere.
Yeah.
I hope so.
I hope we are. Yeah, I hope we're everywhere. And then all the merch is available on our Bandcamp, and should be on the Prosthetic web store as well. And we're going to have new designs for this upcoming tour as well. So those are going to be tour exclusive. We haven't announced those yet, but yeah, if you want, a bit more exclusive designs, come and see us when we announce our tour, and we're going to have that as well.
Do you want to say anything about the vinyl version that Prosthetic is putting out?
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's coming out on like a maroon solid vinyl. It's a gatefold LP with a really awesome like inside kind of panel with fantastic layout done by Woodcutter, who did the CD and the vinyl layout. And yeah, we love the way it came out. We love the way it looks, and it's a nice double LP. So
The artwork is phenomenal.
oh yeah, big shout out to Maria Popik, who absolutely crushed the art. It wraps around the whole gatefold and looks gorgeous.
Whenever we commission art or any layouts or anything, the vinyl is what comes first as part of the vision. Like
Yep.
Kyle is a collector of vinyl, and he wants his vinyls to be an experience.
Yeah.
He wants someone else to have the same experience he has when he opens up his favorite band's vinyl.
Yep.
And it's just the beautiful artwork with the layout, the borders and everything, and
Yep.
the lyrics and stuff. And so yeah, we're very excited about this one.
Mm-hmm.
And if people want to follow Tómarúm online, get updates on the tours that you guys mentioned, what's the best way to do that?
Yeah, so we're posting on our Instagram, Tómarúm Void. We also have our Facebook page, which is, if you just search up Tómarúm, you should be able to find it. We also have our Bandcamp, which is tomarúm.bandcamp.com.
We're also on Twitter.
Yeah, yeah. That's like the middle child of the Tómarúm social medias.
I asked Kyle if he wanted a Twitter, and he was like, "I don't care." And I was like, "Okay, I'll make one."
So we are also on there, and Matt manages that one. And then we do our best to update everything on all our socials. So those are all the socials that we're on.
I mainly just copy and paste things that Kyle posts on Facebook and Instagram and put it on Twitter, and then I try to figure out how to fit it in that character limit because I'm not giving that company money.
There you go.
But yeah.
So the two of you have been very generous with your time, but is there anything else you want to say?
If you listen to the album, talk to us. Let us know how you felt about it. I love talking about music with anyone. So yeah, please do that.
Yeah, similar to Matt, please let us know what you think of the album. We love interaction and feedback, and yeah, we hope you enjoy the second Tómarúm record as much as we enjoy creating it. And yeah, come out and see the shows when we announce them, and yeah, all the streams and definitely purchasing the record and the merch definitely help out a huge amount. So if you enjoy it, pick up a copy, and yeah, we hope you enjoy it. Thank you so much for the support to everyone who listens. And dude, thank you for having us on the podcast and dealing with our weird technical difficulties earlier.
Yeah, thank you so much.
We appreciate it.
Thank you, guys.
Sentence from